Dan Mullen will lead the UNLV football program to the college football playoff in 2025. At least that is what a lot of people in Las Vegas are feeling and hoping for. And there's a lot of talent on this team, and Dan Mullen's a good coach. I dove through the roster, the schedule, and I'm going to break down the 2025 Rebels. This is the Let's Run podcast. Folks, welcome to the show today. Really grateful to have you. While you are here, of course, I cover UNLV, UNLV football, UNLV basketball. I also do talk about general college football topics and college sports topics. So while you're here, please do subscribe to the channel, like this video, share this video with your UNLV friends, people here in Vegas, because I think this 2025 UNLV football team is going to be fascinating to talk about on a week-to-week basis. There's some really fun characters. UNLV has done a much better job as of late using the attractions and the kind of the cool things that we can do in Vegas that you can't do in any other city in the world to help promote this team. And really, it just seems like a fun group of guys. And Dan Mullen is certainly a fun coach and a guy that really inspires confidence in a similar but a little bit flashier way than our previous head coach, Barry Odom, did. So all summer, I've been paying attention to reports out of fall camp. Obviously, I paid attention to spring camp, thinking about the guys we brought in and really trying to dial in how I felt about UNLV football in the 2025 season. And so today, I want to go game by game. I want to break down key positions, key players, and just talk about the team as a whole and what I can expect and what you can expect from them as a fan of UNLV in this 2025 season. So let's dive in. As always, we got a slideshow. I feel like that helps me organize things better. So this is the 2025 UNLV football preview. I'm going to try and keep this briefer than my usual videos, just so that people can get the most information in the most efficient way possible. So the 2024 season, incredible year. UNLV loses twice to Boise State, once to Syracuse. That Syracuse game still stings. So do the Boise State games. But, you know, at the end of the day, the Syracuse game is the one that we're going to think about in the 2024 season. Ultimately, because Boise State goes to the college football playoff, and you always got to say it like Joel Klatt, college football playoff, we end up going to the LA Bowl and we play Cal. We beat Cal. Cal is an ACC team who, for whatever reason, is playing teams like Duke and North Carolina. Barry Odom, pretty soon after the end of the season, departs for Purdue. That was a blow. Barry was and is an outstanding coach. Clearly wanted to get back to the Midwest. Wasn't a Las Vegas guy, although he did a very good job ingratiating himself in the community and building this program. We end up nabbing Dan Mullen to be our head coach. He was previously the offensive coordinator under legendary head coach Urban Meyer at Florida and at the University of Utah. He was, of course, the offensive coordinator under guys like Tim Tebow. He ends up taking over at Mississippi State, has guys like Prescott, Kyle Trask when he went to Florida, really seen as a good football quarterback coach, really good offensive coach, stabilizing force, a guy that everybody in the college football world likes. Because we got Dan Mullen, I think the national media has been pretty kind to us. Just because people like Dan Mullen, and that's, fair enough. That's one of the advantages of getting a media guy as your head coach. I also think we're going to get some of that with Josh Pastner, who had been working in media the last couple of seasons. There were a ton of departures, as is the norm when you lose a head coach in the transfer portal. So Dan Mullen comes in and has to build a team basically from scratch. I recently put out a video breaking down the quarterback battle going on because, as always, the quarterback is the position that determines whether you're a good team or not, essentially, in the world of college sports and in the world of just football. I talked about Alex Orji. I talked about Anthony Calandria. I would highly recommend checking out that video as we dove into some specific film for those guys. Ultimately, I came to the conclusion, and really ever since, even after, because we recruited Anthony Calandria first, even after we recruited Alex Orji as well, who is just a freakishly talented football player, I still felt like Anthony Calandria was the guy to be our QB1, but the school has not announced who will be QB1 as of right now. Alex Orji is perhaps one of the most athletic human beings that has ever walked planet Earth. He has the body of a Greek god. He's got a crazy vertical, and he has talent. He struggled throwing the ball at Michigan, and he is, from what I can tell, hasn't fixed all of those problems here in fall camp for UNLV. But Dan Mullen's kept a pretty tight mouth about who is going to be that starting quarterback. And ultimately, I think it's going to be Anthony Calandria. I think that's the safe bet. I think he's the best player. But I do expect Alex Orji to play a fair amount. And I'm really excited to see how Dan Mullen uses these guys. When we're talking about the offense, now, obviously, these are just a few names that I picked out. There's going to be a lot of contributors, perhaps, people that I'm underrating, or, so if you don't see your name on here, or if you don't see a player who you think should be on here, no problem. These are just some guys that I kind of brought out. We have Troy Omieri. He was previously at Texas, then he played at Arizona State. Really good receiver, got serious size. I think that he's got a great chance to be kind of a primary target. It's impossible to replace a guy like Ricky White. Ricky White had all the talent in the world, was a consummate leader. I was grateful to interview him on this podcast once. And replacing him as wide receiver one is a tough task. But I think that Omieri, along with a slew of other guys, are going to be able to help recreate him in the aggregate. Omieri's a big target, really talented, got good hands, moves well. I'm excited to see him play. Jet Thomas is kind of the best returning player, I guess you could say. He is, outstanding running back, really good player. He's not very big. I shouldn't say that. He's kind of a smaller back. He's not as much of a power back. He's more, I would say, this year going to be a every down type back, kind of a workhorse type player that you can throw your offense on the back of and have him carry you for a couple of quarters. Jet Thomas as RB1 will be outstanding. Another player I wanted to highlight was JoJo Earl. Now, he was a previous kind of five-star player, played at some pretty big schools. His most recent school was TCU. Has been kind of a disappointment throughout his career, and that's a common theme that you will see up and down this UNLV roster. He's a slot receiver, only 5'10", but I think that he can kind of step into that Jacob DeJesus type role. Obviously not on the special teams, but on the offense as a slot receiver. And I'm hoping that with slightly better quarterback play, that we can take advantage of some really good players on the outside. Another running back, Jalen Glover, he's a transfer from the University of Utah. Lots of talent. I think he can be a good, solid running back that can help Jet Thomas carry the load here. I think he's a good player. And there's some other running backs as well. Again, this list isn't exhaustive. Matt Burns, tight end, really excited for him. Haven't heard much about him in fall, but really talented player. I think he could be an outstanding addition to this UNLV offense. Up and down this, especially on the skill position, the offensive line is perhaps a bit smaller than I would like. So I worry a little bit about UNLV's ability to kind of push teams around in the trenches. But certainly against the weaker teams on their schedule, your Utah States, your New Mexicos, I think our offensive line will do just fine pushing those teams around. And it's only against the higher level teams, your UCLAs, your Boise States, where I get those worries a bit more. But ultimately, I think that this is an incredibly talented roster, and I think that there is just a ton of potential here. And it's going to be up to a guy who really, a lot of people think that a guy taking a break from the game, and Dan Mullen was a football coach, for 20 years, 20 plus years. And a lot of people think a guy taking a break from a game for a few years and then coming back is a disadvantage. But at the same time, I think that when they come back, they're not quite as worn down. I mean, you have to understand, at the end of Dan Mullen's tenure at the University of Florida, it was just coming off of COVID, the Florida boosters, even though Dan Mullen took them to back-to-back Orange Bowls and won games and was a really good football coach there. The Florida fan base is just a little antsy ever since, their failure to reestablish themselves as the team that Dan Mullen was such an integral part in winning those national championships as an offensive coordinator. And so I think that having Dan Mullen back away from Florida, away from the SEC, and having just given him a little bit of a break, he's actually going to have a little bit more energy. And it's not like this guy knows football better than anybody. I mean, he's an outstanding football coach. And so I really do think he's going to be able to get the most out of these offensive players and out of the quarterback position. Looking at the defense, some fun names. I love this picture of Justin Flo. He looks crazy. Justin Flo is kind of like the Joker. Now, I actually don't even know that Justin Flo is like guaranteed to be the starter as a linebacker. He was a previous 5-star recruit, went to Oregon, went to Arizona. Not a ton of playing time there, just couldn't quite put it together. There were a few injury issues, but he's an outstanding and talented player who has all the physical tools to be an elite linebacker in college football. And so the hope is that here at UNLV, he can finally put it all together. He's had a big presence on UNLV's social media, really seems to be like a guy that the teammates on the players on the team really like. I cannot wait to see him play. I hope that he can establish himself, especially because Bryce Edmondson, a player who's not on this list, but transfer out of Memphis, was kind of competing with him. There's some injury concerns, so I'm hoping Justin Flo can be one of our starting linebackers. The guy that's going to kind of be the quarterback of the defense in this case is going to be Marcel McDuffie. He is returning from last season, dealt with some injury issues last season, and really hurt the defense. Our defense weakened a little bit as the year went on last year, and missing Marcel McDuffie was a big part of that. So hopefully him coming back, he can step in and be that quarterback that, it's impossible to replace a guy like Jackson Woodard, but we do have people and groups of people that are trying to replace some of that star power that we lost in the aggregate. Denver Harris, another guy that was a big time recruit out of high school, has moved around a lot. Looking forward to seeing if he can contribute. Chief Borders, one of the all team names in college football. 6'4", out of Pittsburgh, transfer from Pittsburgh. One of our best players that we've got on the team in terms of pure and raw talent. And then again, another four. I don't think he was a 5-star, but he's a 4-star player. Played at Alabama and Georgia. Jake Pope as a safety. Hoping that he can step in and fulfill his level of talent. Had a couple of issues at those schools, but by all accounts seems to be a really fun guy and a really talented guy. 4-star. He played for Saban and Kirby Smart, so this guy's got all the talent in the world. And the hope is that, again, kind of like the offense, that these guys can step up and fulfill their potential. And Dan Mullen, who has all the energy in the world right now and is just a great ambassador, I think will be able to do that. And that's kind of the last point I wanted to highlight before we get into the schedule. This really is last chance U for a lot of guys. There's several, 4 or 5-star players, previous 5-star players that are coming in and have kind of flipped around college football. And this is kind of their last chance to live up to that potential. It's a rebuilt roster, tons of new transfers. It's a relatively high, I wouldn't say the floor is low just because the schedule is pretty favorable this year. I don't see UNLV like not being bowl eligible this season, although of course in college football, you never know. But we have an extremely high ceiling because of all of these players and the talent that they bring. So let's dive into the schedule here. I think that, especially with how moving the game from September 13th to August 23rd, I really like how our bye game kind of schedule has set up. I think it works well for Dan Mullen and the coaching staff. Because of moving this game to August 23rd, I'm worried a little bit about the crowd at this Idaho State game, the opener. But you look at our bye weeks, we now have Saturday, September 13th is a bye week. Because we play Hawaii, we get an extra week. We're allowed to play in week 0. There's a few other reasons why teams are allowed to play in week 0, but that's a big reason why. We play our next bye week. We have basically 2 bye weeks in 3 weeks in the middle of September, and that should help, especially if there's some early kinks that we have to work out in our offense. That should help, and especially with the travel all the way to Hawaii, the team really hit their form and hit their stride going into this stretch in October, which will basically decide the season. Away at Air Force, away at Wyoming, home versus Air Force, and away at Boise State. I mean, that's where the season is going to be made or break. That's the make or break time. Our last bye week is in October. It's not great that we have 5 straight weeks to end the season without a bye week, but there's only one short week there. It's a home game versus Hawaii. The travel isn't bad. Colorado State and at Reno. Not bad at all. So let's go game by game and break down what I think is going to happen in each of these games. So August 23rd, home versus Idaho State. Obviously, if you guys follow CF Budge, who is kind of an online sports college football commentator, said, hey, 25 and a half, I think, is the spread right now for this home game versus Idaho State. Idaho State is a program that's improving. Certainly, UNLV should handle them no problem. But he was saying, hey, you should take the under. You should. Idaho State's going to make this a closer game against UNLV than people think. And that might be the case. I think that UNLV will win this game comfortably regardless. Again, each team gets this kind of FCS or lower level division team that comes into play each season that are supposed to be easy wins for these programs. And I don't think Idaho State's going to present that much of a problem. Do I see a scenario where UNLV wins by 21 or 24 and we don't cover? I mean, yeah, but does that mean that I think Idaho State will give us fits? No, not necessarily. I don't really care for betting. I don't care for betting as a form of telling how good a team was, especially not in football, and especially not when the spreads are so large. If you have a 35-point spread and a team wins by 31, I don't really care if the team didn't cover. So I expect UNLV football to win this game handily. I expect this to be kind of a game where you see a lot of Alex Orji and Anthony Calandria, especially in the second half with Alex Orji. I am hopeful, really hopeful, that the quarterback position, especially after this game, obviously there will be a starter named before this game, but I hope that we feel good about where the quarterback position is at the end of this game. So I've got UNLV 1-0 going into game 2, which is at Sam Houston State. Now this is trickier. This is a trickier game than I would like. And whenever you go on the road in college football, especially at places and to schools that you're not super familiar with, it's always a little scarier than it should be, no matter how bad you think the team that you're going to play is. Sam Houston is coming off of a pretty decent season. I believe they were like 9-4 last year. They lost a lot of their players and they lost their coach. And so they're kind of rebuilding. But, Sam Houston is a team. I saw them when they played their first ever FBS game against BYU. It's a team and a program that can sneak up on you. I would take the under. I will pick UNLV to win this game. Obviously, I think that UNLV is better, that we have too much talent. But, if we have a bad quarterback game or an injury or something, this is a game that I'm a little nervous for. And I'm nervous for every game. I'm just, as you'll see by my predictions for this season, I'm just a bit more pessimistic about the Rebels' chances this year to be an incredible team. And so I've got UNLV winning this game at Sam Houston State. I think it'll be closer than we like, but I think that they will ultimately prevail. Not easy to go on the road. And Sam Houston, while it's not some incredible road environment, they're still working on their stadium situation. I just get a little nervous, guys. I'm not saying we're going to lose, but I'm a little nervous about this one. Next game is home versus UCLA. This game is, outside of the Boise State game, obviously the most important game of the season. One of the most important games in the history of UNLV football. It's imperative that we are 2-0 heading into this game, that we don't have some crazy letdown loss at Sam Houston. UCLA will be coming off of a week 1 game against the University of Utah, which I would fully expect UCLA to lose. If UCLA beats Utah that week, there is a chance, an outside chance, that they could be ranked coming into Allegiant Stadium. And ultimately, this UCLA team, they picked up Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee. There's some talent there. They're kind of rebuilding a little bit as they're struggling a bit with the Big Ten. But they are a Big Ten team. They are UCLA. They are a program that UNLV doesn't have a ton of success with historically, not that we've played them that many times. And I see this kind of as a straight up coin flip game. And I would give, in my opinion, the slight edge to UCLA in this one. I just worry about meshing all of these UNLV football players together. The Big Ten and UCLA, and there's some money behind UCLA football right now. I think it's going to be a really close game, maybe something similar to the Syracuse game last year. I could see it going into double overtime. But ultimately, I just worry that UNLV doesn't quite have the horses in Dan Mullen's first year to win this game. And it's not that I'm saying that we can't win this game. This isn't some impossible task, but I would just give UCLA the slight edge. So I would have UNLV after 3 games at 2-1. I think it's going to be a fun game with a big crowd, hoping to get over 50,000 in Allegiant Stadium for this game. And I think we absolutely can. Then we play a very tricky game at Miami, Ohio. This game, I feel this is the true game on the schedule that I have absolutely no idea how it's going to go. Now, Miami, Ohio is not some perennial football power, but they are a very respectable MAC program. It is on the road. It is across the country. We are coming off of, especially say we beat Sam Houston, Idaho State, and UCLA and we're 3-0, riding high. We might even be nationally ranked, probably not at that point, but we could be at that point heading into this Miami game. This is Trap City. I mean, the Red Hawks that's a good program, a program that can absolutely beat you. It is on the road. And, I am worried that UNLV will lose this game. I really am. And I'm going to pick against the Rebels in this one. And it's not because I don't think the Rebels can win this game. Again, I think it's kind of a coin flip game. And in a first year of a head coach for Dan Mullen at UNLV and with all these new moving parts, I have UNLV losing this game at Miami, Ohio. And by losing this game, I have UNLV being eliminated from the college football playoff picture. Obviously not from the Mountain West race, but I have essentially UNLV basically being eliminated from the college football playoff picture in late September at 2-2. Dan Mullen, it's not uncommon for teams to struggle out of the gate a little early, especially in a coach's first season. And so while I do have confidence in Dan Mullen that he is the right guy, I can see the Rebels struggling a little bit early and dropping a game at the University of Miami. So I have them at 2-2. Then we play at Wyoming. I think this is a great bounce back opportunity. I do not believe in Wyoming's coaching staff at all. It will not be too cold there yet, so we're not in one of these scenarios in the late part of the season where you're playing in a tundra in Laramie. I think the Rebels bounce back pretty easily here and are able to beat a struggling Wyoming program. I have all the confidence in the world in this game, and I think they'll want to get, Dan Mullen will bring the guys together and get us a very good and convincing victory at Wyoming on October 4th. Then we have kind of a tough game against the Air Force Academy. Air Force does not project to be one of the best teams in the Mountain West this coming year, but they run the triple option for a defense with a lot of guys that there's not a ton of guys that have played against Air Force on this defense. There are some obviously, but there's not a ton of returning. And when you play against a triple option team like Air Force, it can just be kind of clunky. I have the Rebels beating Air Force. I'm glad that it is at home. Again, this is another game that makes me a little nervous, and it should always make you nervous when your team plays a service academy. Just because, they don't play against the triple option very often, and the triple option is an absolute chore to try and get through. And so I'm a little worried about this one, but I do have the Rebels winning this one, getting us obviously to 4-2. Then comes the big one at Boise State. This is October 18th. I project Boise State to be, college football playoff contenders. I don't know that they'll get there this coming season. I have them at 10-2, but I expect Boise State to win this game. It's just really tough to play in Boise. Being able to beat Boise State before they leave the Mountain West would just mean the world to this program, to UNLV. Boise State has had a lot of success. Those players on that roster have beaten UNLV 3 straight times in 2 Mountain West championship games. And then, of course, the game at Allegiant Stadium last season. And so, do I think UNLV could win this game? Yeah. I mean, I'd give it a 25, 35% chance. It's a puncher's chance. It's an okay shot. It's better than, and I think that UNLV will be kind of recollected after those early season struggles. But ultimately, I don't see UNLV winning this one. I just think it's going to be tough. And that would be UNLV's first Mountain West loss. Luckily, after that, the schedule lightens up a little bit in terms of Mountain West opponents. We play home New Mexico. I think New Mexico will be improved this coming season. I really like their coach, Jason Eck, but I do see the UNLV team beating New Mexico pretty handily. At Colorado State, I think that Jay Norvell is one of the most overrated coaches in all of college football. This is another kind of tough game. Braden Fowler Nicolosi, that program has a lot of money poured into it. Colorado State does take football very seriously. I just don't think they've got the coach for the job. And ultimately, I was picking when I was looking over the schedule. I said at Miami or at Colorado State. I think the Rebels are going to drop one of those two games. Those are two good programs with investments, more especially more so on the Colorado State side. Which game am I going to pick? Are they going to lose at Miami or are they going to lose at Colorado State? And I ultimately went with losing at Miami. I think the Rebels go on the road and beat Colorado State. Although, again, this is going to be a tough game. It's going to be kind of a coin flip type game. And then they have home Utah State playing Bronco Mendenhall. If the Rebels are not careful, Utah State will absolutely come into Allegiant and beat them just off of discipline alone. And just, they're not going to be the most talented team in the country. But Bronco Mendenhall is a very good head coach. As a person that watched him growing up as the head coach at BYU, he is serious, he is disciplined, and we saw what he did at New Mexico last season. If you are not careful, this Utah State team will come on the road and beat you at Allegiant Stadium. So I do expect the Rebels to win, but I just want to highlight that Bronco Mendenhall is a serious guy, and if you're not careful, his team will come in and beat you. But I do have the Rebels beating Utah State. Again, we get Hawaii at home, the battle of the Ninth Island for the Golden Pineapple. I don't think Hawaii is going to be good at all next season. Their defense will be probably better than better than it has any right to be. But I just don't think that Tommy Chang and that offense and that run and shoot offense is really going to ever come together. And I don't expect Hawaii to be very good. So I do expect UNLV to beat Hawaii. And then, of course, on November 29th, we play Sparks Community College, the school situated in Reno in the state of Nevada, whose flagship university is the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I think Reno is going to be improved next season. This is going to be a little tricky. The Rebels will have to be careful going on the road at Reno. But ultimately, I do think the Rebels are just a better program. We've got good momentum against Reno at the moment. And, Sparks Community College just is a trash institution with a trash coach and trash players. And so Jeff Choate is a guy that you don't want to mess around with. But I do expect the Rebels to win at Sparks Community College. So going back to the beginning here, I have the Rebels with 4 losses. I have them losing to UCLA. I have them losing at Miami. I have them losing. I have them losing to UCLA. I have them losing to Miami. I have them losing to Boise State. And then I have them going on a really good kind of end of season run. And I do think that will be sufficient, even with San Jose State avoiding UNLV and UNLV and Boise State. I do think that UNLV at 9-3 probably could get to the Mountain West Championship game. And when you go game by game like this, you pick a game and you feel confident about it. But in the aggregate, oftentimes, even though you pick a team to go 9-3 on a game by game basis, when you look at their schedule as a whole, you end up saying that they're going to go 8-4. And that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like 8-4 is the most realistic scenario for this UNLV football team. They could very well go 9-3. 8-4, I think is it depends on where those losses come. If they lose to, if they go 1-3 in non-conference and they end up losing to Colorado State on the road, could they make the Mountain West Championship game with 2 losses? It would depend. But I've got the Rebels at 8-4 this season. I picked them individually to go 9-3, but I feel like there's a place where they're going to slip up that we're not quite expecting. And 8-4 certainly is not a record that I would say is shameful. Which game are they going to lose? They could lose at Colorado State game. They could lose a dumb game at home to Air Force. They could lose at Wyoming. Individually, I pick the Rebels in those games, but you just never know. And would 8-4 be a disappointment? I think it would be a little bit, but considering where this program has been in its history, I do not think that, it's something that Rebel fans should be ashamed of. Obviously, with all of the Pac-12 discussion and UNLV being the flagship of the new Mountain West, it would be not the greatest look to go 8-4. I think 9-3 has to be kind of the basement type goal for this program. And it's attainable based on the schedule. But I just worry about trying to fit this many new faces into a program. And it being a first season, and I worry a little bit about the offensive and defensive lines, and I worry about our ability to kind of push teams around. And so 8-4 is where I have the Rebels. People will say, well, which 4 games are they going to lose? And I picked 3. I picked 3 for them to lose and 9 for them to win. But ultimately, when you're holistically looking at a team, you have to understand that games are toss-up games. You're not going to win all of them. You're going to lose some of them. And UNLV's schedule at 8-4, it's a little disappointing, but considering where this program has been and it only being the first year of Dan Mullen, I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of. They could absolutely go 9-3. Their ceiling is probably 10-2. Losses to Boise State and then a loss somewhere dumb. But the goal for the team should absolutely be to go 9-3, to go 10-2, to return to the Mountain West Championship game, and to really try and dethrone Boise State. That would be the absolute pinnacle. And it would be very nice to win the Mountain West and send the Boise State and the departing members packing. I do hope that UNLV beats all of the departing members. That would be very nice. But guys, that's how I feel about the UNLV football team. 8-4, that's where I'm at. I understand that's not a popular opinion among Rebel fans, but got to be honest. So please let me know your thoughts. What do you think UNLV football is going to be in the 2025 season? Do you think I'm overrating them? Do you think I'm underrating them? Please let me know. I appreciate you guys checking out the video, and let's run.